Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast. This is episode 48. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
And we have no Pawel this week, but we've got a stand-in.
Yeah. Hello.
We've got Dave with us.
I'm back.
You'll remember him from episode when we had him on. I can't remember what number it was.
Dub that in now. He's doing Pawel's job of making you laugh during the intro.
I think that was a few episodes ago, 44, maybe 46.
Probably.
We had Dave on, he was giving us his feelings on Gloomhaven and that kind of thing. Yesterday was International Tabletop Day.
Yeah.
So we decided to do some live streaming and we played a couple of things that we haven't talked about before. I got a new one. We've got Captain Sonar. I also bought the Colonists, but we're going to probably have to wait a while before we get that out because there's an intimidating amount of cardboard in there.
Aye, there's a lot going on there.
I got it out of the box this morning, looked at it and went, I might need a day to work this one out. So we'll maybe get to that one in the future. But yeah, we've got a few games to talk about here. We're going to start with Captain Sonar because this was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We only managed a 4-player game of this. It seems that it's kind of set up for at least 6 or 8. 8 being the maximum, but it's a team game where you split into 2 teams and you are both piloting submarines and trying to kill each other. It's Battleship for a grown-up world.
It's advanced battleships, isn't it? For board game day, we didn't get too heavy with board game day, did we? We streamed quite a lot of
but that was the idea, really. I don't think when people come in to watch people playing board games, unless you're really looking for something really long, I think the majority of people are looking for stuff that's a bit easy to understand and know what's going on.
Game of Thrones attracted quite a few folk, but then I suppose that's...
but that's quite specific, that.
Name recognition.
Well, that's it.
But aye, Captain Sonar was a lot of fun. We played a couple of rounds of that.
Yep.
It seems like it's set up to take teams of 4, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But we played it with...
We played it with 2.
Two teams of 2. Which I actually thought probably worked out better, certainly for learning the game. There's...
Aye, you're probably right, actually.
Because at least you get an idea of how things work. I mean, we played... I think really you're meant to play it in real time, so it is chaotic, but we played it turn by turn.
Yeah.
Because we're basically just getting a feel for it.
And I think that was the right thing to do when you're first learning the game.
Aye.
Well, the thing is, when you play with 4 people, you pretty much have to play it turn-based because there's 4 different roles in each ship. So you've got the captain, you've got the first mate, you've got the engineer, and you've got a radio operator. Now, the thing is that when you play it with less than the 8 people that you probably should play it with, the captain has to take on multiple roles. So the captain has to be the first mate and the engineer. What a weird ship that is. But and the radio operator works alone, and there is a pretty good reason for that.
Yeah, they've got a big job.
Yeah. So it's a game of hidden movements, really.
Yeah.
So you've got a big screen in the middle of the table, so the 2 teams can't see what each other have. And what you have is a bunch of plastic boards, and you get a bunch of dry white markers with the game, and you're actually just drawn on these boards. So you have a grid that shows where, shows a map basically with several points in it. If you think like a battleship board, it's just got several points on it. But there's also islands on the board, and there could be other things. So there's actually different scenarios in this game that you can play, and it's basically just different maps. And some of them have special rules, but we just played the pretty basic few islands on the board.
Deathmatch.
Yeah, deathmatch game.
Sub-deathmatch.
Submarine deathmatch. And what you're doing is, at the start of the game, the captain decides at what point on that map your submarine starts at. And then the captain will say, okay, let's go north, or let's go west, or whatever. Just you pick a direction and you draw a line on your map to say that you've gone in that direction. Now, the radio operators on both teams are listening to the other captains and listening to what way they're going, and their board's slightly different because they have a plastic sheet that goes over the top of their plastic board.
You have the same map, basically.
It's this exact same map as the captain has, but they have a plastic sheet on top of that, and they draw lines on it. So if the opposing captain says north, they'll just draw a line going up. and they get to move their plastic sheet around as the other captain is declaring what direction they're going in. You're drawn on it. They move their plastic sheet around on that map to say, okay, they can't have gone in that direction if they started here because there's an island there and they would have hit it, so they can't do that.
Or in our case, I think we worked out that you would have had to have moved off the board.
Yeah, and you can't move off the board. Yeah, that's the other thing. So that's an interesting role, and that's why the radio operator kind of has to work alone, because they're constantly just looking at this map and trying to figure out where the enemy ship is, and passing that information on to the captain. Don't keep that to yourself, because it's a game of communication. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's the radio operator is essentially going to be the one that's going to tell you, turn to the captain and say, look, you want to be firing here, or you want to be dropping a mine here, because I reckon this sub is in this area. And as you go on, I mean, you've got the other roles there, so as you're moving, systems are going to break, and you've got an engineer who's got to decide what systems are going to break and how to sort of deal with repairing them. And you've also got another, what's the other role again?
The first officer.
First officer,
the first mate.
Yeah, who's charging up. For every movement you do, you put one tick in a box on, you've got a sheet with, there is six.
There's six systems. One of them's a scenario thing, so that's only scenario specific, and most of the scenarios don't use it.
And you've got your weapons system, so you can drop mines and fire torpedoes. You've got your sonar, so you can fire a drone out, and you can
use the sonar. Yeah.
And then your other ones, either scenario, which we didn't use, or you can go to silent running. Yeah. And yeah, they basically give you various advantages. The weapons, pretty straightforward. You're just using them to try and do damage to the other sub. The sonar ones, so the sonar, you use that, you can... The other team have to give you two pieces of information. One of them true, one of them false.
Yes.
And that's an interesting tactic, because you can give yourself away quite easily there.
And you have to be. It's quite specific about that as well. So if you think of, again, like a battleship board, it's rows and columns. So it's A to J or something like that.
Something like that.
And then 1 to whatever, something, some number.
You can also give the sector, because it's split into 4 sectors.
So you have to give you have to give a row, a column, or a sector. You have to give two pieces of information. It has to be different. So you can say we're in row B, we're in row 7, column B. Or you can say we're in column B, sector 4. But like you say, one of those things has to be false, and one of them has to be true.
Mm. And we got an advantage in that in the first game, where Dave here gave us two pieces of information, one of which could not possibly have been true. So I knew which one immediately was true.
And that's the thing, though, because if you're the radio operator just looking at that board, like you say, it's quite easy to give yourself away, because the radio operator can look at the way that your ship has been moving and then just say, well, yeah, that thing's impossible. They can't be there, because if they were in that column, then they would have had to make this movement, and that's impossible in all parts of that column. So,
well, I think because when the roles were reversed and you did it to me, I really struggled to find out. I took ages going, okay, what am I going to tell them? And even then, I was like, do you know what? Probably one of the thing that's false will probably, if they match it up, will probably lead to some island or something like that. There will be something in the way. They just need to work it out, basically. And the other sonar ability, the drone you fire up, basically you can ask the other captain whether they are in a specific one of the 4 sectors, and they have to answer yes or no. That helps you sort of narrow down if you've got sort of multiple places you think they could be. And then, of course, silent running allows you to you
move multiple spaces.
Yeah, it's in one direction.
Yeah, you have to go in a straight line, but you don't declare which way you're going, and you can move up to 4 spaces, and that's just your way of getting out of trouble.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. The other thing as well with the movement, you can't cross back over your own line of movement.
It's Snake.
Imagine it like Snake. If you look at it on the map, you can't cross back over yourself. That's just to make the game actually work, I suppose.
Well, it's more to keep it. It makes the game work, but it keeps the game interesting as well. Because then you really have to be careful about where you're moving, because there were several times, me and you were on a team, and there were several times where we almost boxed ourselves in. Or we got to a point where it was like, well, we can only go in this direction because of the lines that we've drawn. But by doing that, because the engineer has to, like, the way the engineer works is that anytime you make a movement, there are columns on the engineer's board with symbols for the different systems, and you have to cross out. So if you move north, you have to cross out a symbol on the north thing, and if one of those symbols for a certain system is damaged, you can't use that system. So if you damage your weapon system, you can't use torpedoes or mines.
Yeah.
So we got in a situation where we were like had to make like a west movement or something because there was nowhere else for us to go because we kind of boxed ourselves in a bit. But it ended up ruining a load of our systems, and we couldn't do very much.
Yeah, I mean that's the trick in this game.
Yeah.
The big complication is the damaging of the systems and by your movement, and the repairing of the systems.
Yeah.
Because there's a slightly unusual layout for the various symbols on the engineer's board, where groups of 4 of them are linked together in a they're linked with a kind of line, and there's usually all of them have 3 on one of the directions, and the 4th one is in one of the other directions. And if you damage all 4 of those, then they get automatically repaired, and you get to rub off the damage markers with your little eraser.
Your fun little eraser.
So, in order to repair your systems, you sometimes have to move in a way that might give yourself away to the other team. But sometimes you have to do that because if you want to fire your torpedoes, you have to have all the little torpedo boxes clear on the engineer's board. So it gets really, really, really tricky.
Yeah.
You can get yourself into really, really difficult situations, as I found.
Yeah. I think there's a part of the game that we really underestimated when we started playing it as well. We were just kind of like, all right, fair enough, you damage some things, but then you don't actually realise until you start playing the game that actually that's a massive thing.
Yeah. And
that it really does mess with your strategy.
Well, it's the thing, in the early stages of the game, I talked about this with our sort of second game that we played, where I felt I'd moved in such a way that I was able to damage the circuit, repair it, and there was nothing else outstanding, and I was keeping things pretty well. But then you get to a point where it's like, if you want to do something, you're going to have to take a move that you might not necessarily have wanted to do to keep that engineering thing happy. So, I mean, the other option is you do have on each of the sort of the directional things, because you've got the ones that are in the circuit, which you're sort of trying to use because they're easy to repair. But then there is also at the bottom of each one, there's usually a symbol, a sort of like radioactive symbol for your reactor, and there's
one other
that's usually covers one of the systems. And if you cross out if you damage all of your reactors, then you get radiation, and you take damage.
Yeah.
You can also, the other thing you can do is the way that it's divided into each direction has a section. If you damage all of the circuits in one sort of directional box, then you take 1 damage, but then you clear off all damage across all of the broken sort of circuits. So you can kind of. I saw you guys made that judgment call quite early on, I think, in one of the games where you're just like, right, we just need to clear off all of these broken systems.
We're just going to take the
hit.
Take the hit. In the first game, it happened somewhat inadvertently.
Right.
You just got into such a freaking mess.
It was a learning curve, man.
The first mission was a shakedown. The second one, I was totally on it, and.
No, you weren't. I think we got lucky in the second game, really.
It was just by the time
we won. Yes,
I think by the time we both worked out roughly, but I think you had a better idea of where we are. We had you within like 1 or 2 spaces. We knew because you'd gone silent running, but we knew roughly where you were going to be. But we had no weapons. Well, we had all the weapon systems charged, but all of the systems on the engineering panel were just buggered. And there was no way I was going to get them fixed in any time to do anything effective to you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, although we won that game, I wouldn't say it was necessarily because of my skillful captaining. It was a question of time. It was a question of timing, because when we encountered each other, we both knew where the other submarine was with a sort of reasonable degree of accuracy. And you don't need to know always the exact point, because the weapons that you use have a blast radius of 9 squares. So if it's a direct hit with a torpedo, like if you call out J5 where you launch the torpedo to, and they say, "Yep, we're there," they take 2 points of damage. But if they're within one square way of that point, then they still take 1 point of damage, and that's quite a lot because you only have four health on your submarine. So when we happen to encounter each other for the big showdown, we just happen to be in the situation where we could use
and you had
all of our offensive systems, and Euan's team were not in that situation. So even though they knew where we were, they were desperately trying to clear damage so that they could do something, so they could launch a torpedo.
I think the game, I mean, like, you can try and sort of skillfully navigate and try and balance all these different things, but I think the game is kind of set up for at some point there to just be some calamitous fuck up. There's going to be an accident, no matter what. I mean, I think that's why you've only got 4 I don't think the game could sustain more than 4 damage, because it would just become ridiculous.
Yeah.
You would probably have to be crossing your line. But I'm assuming this has been play tested to buggery, that you would either be crossing your line or you would just have 2 subs just dead in the water, not able to do anything to each other.
Well, there is another thing about repairing, because you can surface.
Yeah.
You can surface your ship, and then it depends on whether you're playing turn-based or real-time about what happens at that point. But because we were playing it turn-based, essentially, did we ever surface at any point? I don't think we did, did we?
Neither team
You
surfaced.
We
discussed it at length, I think, and then we decided against it. But like surfacing, you have to call out what sector you're in when you do it, so you put yourself in danger, because then the other team can really pinpoint where you are. But the other thing is that you basically, if you surface, you basically get a chance to just repair everything that's wrong with your ship and then dive again. But in the turn-based thing, I think the other team gets 3 free moves.
I think that's right, yeah.
Now, the real-time version's a bit weirder, because there's actually a diagram of the submarine on the engineer's sheet, and there's it's split into 4 sectors, and there's a white border around each of the 4 sectors, and you have to take your pen and draw a line around the inside the white border of each sector, but each person in the team has to do that and then initial it. They then pass it to the other team's engineer, and that team's engineer has to confirm that the lines that you drew were inside the white border, because if you went outside the white border, you have to rub it and start again. So it's just it's that thing of do you try and do this as quickly as possible and then get back underwater? Because in the real-time version, there is no turn-based for sitting waiting for each other to do things. The ships are constantly moving as fast as they decide to move. So it's it becomes a thing of do you decide to take your time to draw, make sure you draw inside this border, or do you just go for it and get back underwater as quickly as possible and take the risk of you messing it up? Now, I really want to try the real-time version of this, because we haven't actually tried it.
That does sound like a fun minigame.
Oh, yeah. But it's not just that. I just mean, the game's chaotic enough as turn-based, but we had too much time to think about what we were doing. If you're playing it in real time, if one of the teams has been really aggressive and just battering about the place and the other team isn't, you can just, you can put yourself in serious danger here.
That's true, yeah. But I suppose if you're moving quite a lot in the space of time that another team's taking a long time, there is a trade-off there where they're quite easily able to see where you're going and have a better chance of narrowing down your position.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Is was to stop you just not moving? But
I'm not sure.
But no, yes, we didn't make a great deal of use of the sonar and the drones in our games.
Yeah.
However, if another team were to be quite slow and cagey, that would just give the opposition time to get their drones out. To get the sonar, you can cycle quite quickly. It only takes 2 movement to charge the sonar up.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you need to move to get anything.
But that's in the turn-based thing, because in the real-time version, you flip the board over. It actually takes longer to charge your systems. So there's the encouragement for actually moving.
If
you don't move, you're going to have no systems charged.
You can't do anything.
Yeah.
But you're not giving away your position. But that's what I'm saying. That's what the sonar and the drones are for. If you just sit still, then the opposition will eventually track down exactly where you are if you leave it long enough.
You also have no weapons to retaliate with.
So
basically, just sitting in the seabed is not an option.
No.
They're almost like 2 different games. I would say the turn-based game, which I really enjoyed, and I can see people getting a lot out of 4-player turn-based. To me, that's like a game in its own, and we haven't played the real-time version with more players, so it's hard to comment on that until we actually do it.
Yeah.
But I can see it being a very, very different kind of game, and that's that's quite cool having 2 games in one.
Totally agree. Aye, I really want to try this this real-time version.
Just the sheer chaos of it.
It does seem like it would be crazy. I'd probably end up with brain fry.
To be honest, like just the 2-player turn-based one was starting to like, because it was the sort of game where you'd think, oh, we could probably play multiple rounds of this, but by the end of the second one, I was like, do you know what? Can we just put this down for him? Because my head was a bit pickled, to be honest, and it wasn't even that difficult, but it was just it came to a point. It's like I've had to think about this far too much. Yeah. I think I enjoyed the radio operator.
Yeah, I was
more
just going to say, I really enjoyed the puzzle of being the radio operator. And actually sitting, because when the other team drops mines, it's like, okay, I'll mark that on my map, and that means that if I can figure out where their position is, I'll know roughly where their mines are as well, so we can stay away. I mean, I remember I drew a scribble on your captain's board at one point, just saying, like, stay away from that area, because there's probably a mine there.
Right.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things that this game does with the cooperation that not necessarily seen in other games is that the way that the boards are laid out alongside each other.
Yeah.
It's very deliberate. You have to imagine if you play with 4 players in a team, you really have to sit side by side.
Yeah.
And the boards are ordered in a very specific way. You have to put them in that order. And that's because for your role, you look at your control panel, your board, but the other systems, the other boards that you need to look at are adjacent to you.
Yeah.
And those are the ones, so if you're the captain, you would communicate with the radio operator to your left because they've got a lot to say to each other. And you would also look at the systems operator, the first operator to your right. But you're not really supposed to look direct or too much at the engineer because he's down in the bowels of the ship.
Yeah.
So you would have to kind of shout across to him.
Oh, right.
And is that like shout back to you?
I never actually read that in the rules. That's quite specific about how that's supposed to be laid out. Because that's one thing where obviously the captains, the movements the captain's declaring, and what the engineer's doing in terms of like breaking systems as you go, they're quite sort of linked in how they're going to affect the fortunes of your submarine. So surely that's the one where you're going to want to both be trying to sort of like see what the other's doing.
Well, that's why I think they've made it so that you don't sit next to each other, because it would be a real temptation as the captain to basically do the engineer's job as well.
Well, I mean,
and basically say like, do that. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't really be very much for the engineer to do necessarily.
Well, that was the one thing I noticed doing it 2-player, where as the captain, a lot of where you're thinking of moving, you're dictating that by like what systems you're gonna break as you go. It's like a lot of my movement was just entirely based around that. Whereas, you might get, if the roles are split, the captain's just going, right, I want to go here, and then the engineer has to work out how to do it.
I think that's the idea. The captain's going to say, like, right, can we go this way? And the engineer's going to say, well, if we could go that way, but we're not going to be able. We'll lose the ability to launch the torpedoes if we go in that direction. And I think that's kind of what they were trying to go for with the game, is sort of promoting that kind of communication. I think you'd have to play in a slightly specific way. You'd have to play in the spirit of the game to an extent when you play this, and I think that would be the way to do it. To get the most enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's not the sort of game you want to get so invested that you're going to... Because it's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really enjoyed that. There was almost something chess-like about it at times.
Oh, totally.
They were just trying to just kind of outwit each other and knowing when to use the right things. And using the silence thing I found was really interesting because it's silent running, the other team doesn't know which direction you've gone in and how far you've gone. But you can just sit and say to yourself, right, what would I do if I was in that position? Mm-hmm. Like, where would I go?
Yeah, it's not like they've just disappeared. You've got certain parameters to work within that you know okay, it's got to be. And James did a really good job in marking that up in the map. Like that would have fried my brain. But
James's map was crazy.
But he's got those architect skills where he was just like he had it worked out. Okay, this is the sort of area, and these are the possible lines he could have gone. So he had it all very well annotated and worked out where he could have been.
Indeed. Anyway, we're going to have to move on now. So yeah, that's Captain Sonar by Matigo. And it's designed by Roberto Fraga and Johan Lemonnier. So a couple of French designers, I think, there.
The Captain Sonar.
They have their names in the front of the box, I believe, as Captain Fraga and Lieutenant Lemonnier.
Nice.
So there you go. Great fun. I'm actually really looking forward to playing the real-time version of that, and then trying to decide which version I like best. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about another game we haven't talked about before, which is Waggle Dance.
This one's always almost made it onto the podcast several times.
Yeah.
Where we've gone, is that the game we should play?
Yeah, we should play that now.
No.
But every time we've decided we want to play it, we've always had like 3 people or 5 people, and I think the game's just designed for 4. It only goes up to 4.
Yeah.
And anytime it's been suggested, I've just been like, nah, I kind of want to play it with 4.
It works well with 4.
Yeah, I think it does it, because we've played it with 3 2 or 3 years ago, in fact. It was maybe 2 years ago we played it. And I actually much prefer this 4-player version. I think it's just been designed for that. Yeah. So Waggle Dance, if you know what the Waggle Dance is, it's a dance that bees do to tell other bees where the nectar is. So this is a game about bees. So you're basically...
Strange CGI futuristic bees, according to creator.
Oh yeah, the artwork on the front of this box is crazy. It's obviously it's very hexagon based.
It does seem to be inspired by a cheese-induced dream.
Yeah.
The author just doesn't seem to have woke up from. He thinks that this is what bees are like.
It's very colourful.
It's very 1970s
sci-fi
novel cover.
Oh wow, yeah.
But yeah, the artwork is really nice on that box. So yeah, you're playing as a hive of bees, basically. So each player is a hive of bees. Now this is it's a worker placement game, really.
Yeah.
But you're using dice, so it's one of those worker placement games where you roll your dice, and the values that you roll will determine where you can put them. In most cases, not all of them. Basically, you start the game with a beehive, which is only 3 tiles. So you've got 3 hexes, and you just stick them together. Now, there's also on the table, you have bunches of cards in the middle of the table. Now, those are labelled A to G. So you have a card that lets you claim new hive tiles. You have the next card lets you hatch eggs, then you can claim eggs, and then you can claim nectar. Now, there's actually 6 of those cards that claim nectar, because there's 6 different flowers. You can trade, you can make honey and move nectar, and you can draw a queen bee card. So that's the different cards there are. So when you are placing your bees, you roll your dice, and then you go round the table in turn order, placing one die at a time. And you start the game. It's only... What do you start the game with? Is it only 3?
It's 6 dice.
6 dice?
6 dice.
Yeah, 6 dice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting confused with Walkstar.
Oh, yeah.
So you start a game with 6 dice, you roll your dice, and then you can decide when it's your turn where you want to put your dice. Now, some of these cards only have spaces that are numbered 1 to 6, so you can only put a die with... If there's an open space for 2, for example, you could put your number 2 on that. And those are the tiles that, like, the claim hive tiles, claiming an egg. Those are it's those kind of spaces. So yeah, you're going around, you're placing your dice, and the goal of this game is to turn your tiles into honey.
Yeah.
Now, you do that by getting nectar, and then turning it into honey using the make honey action. So when you're claiming nectar, like I say, there's 6 flower spaces, and they're numbered 1 to 6. So flowers numbered 1 to 6, and you can only put... So the number 1 flower can only have number 1 dice on it, and then there's number 2 dice and number 2 flower, blah blah blah. And it's an area majority thing with that, and it's a bit of a weird one as well.
Yeah.
So if I'd put 2 5s on the 5 flower, and you would put 1 5 in the 5 flower, I've got area majority there. So I've got the most dice there, so I would get 2 nectar. The next what's the thing I'm looking for? The second
best.
The second most dice. The person with the second most dice gets 1 nectar.
Runner up.
And anybody else on that gets nothing. But if there's ties, it gets a bit strange, because if there's a tie for first place, the 2 first place players get 1 nectar, but also the person that's second also gets 1 nectar.
Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting thing there, because you can just if two people were tying on that thing, you can just throw a die on there and just say, well, I'll get one as well now.
Yeah.
I don't even have to put any more on it. It's kind of a strange thing, but when you get your nectar, you put that into your hive, so you can put your nectar, you can have up to 4 nectar cubes on one hive tile. If you've got 4 of the same colour on a hive tile, you can use the make honey action to turn that nectar into honey, and you just flip your hive tile over.
Yeah.
And like I say, the goal of the game is to get a certain number of honey tiles. I think it's 5 for a short game, 7 for a medium game, and 9 for a long game. So we only played a short game. We were going to play a medium game, but somebody had to bail.
Yeah.
So
I think it lost me the game. I'm just going to
my plans.
scuppered all our plans.
Properly scuppered.
It won me the game, so I'm fine with this. But the game's separated into day and night phases. So during the day you're placing your dice, and it's only in the night phase that you actually run through the cards from left to right. So you start at A, and it's quite deliberate the way they've laid that out.
That's like most worker placement games. There is an order to how you resolve things, and there's usually a deliberate reason why that's in that order, because it affects why you might do certain things.
Yeah, definitely, because the hatch egg card is before the claim egg card. So basically you cannot hatch an egg that you took that turn.
Yeah.
And it's deliberate that. Now hatching eggs just basically means you get an extra die. And that's quite, I would say that's quite important in this game.
You want to increase your bees.
You want to get more bees, so you can do more stuff, you can get more nectar, you can then claim, make more honey. One of the interesting things is the queen bee cards in this as well. Some of those are really powerful, and they can really give you an edge. I think it pretty much won me the game, because I got a queen bee card that let me use any 2 values of dice to make honey. Because usually when you make honey, you have to put dice on top of the nectar in your hive that are of the same value. Yeah. So you can put 2 6s or 2 5s, 2 4s. But it's like some of the queen bee cards will do stuff like let you use any values. There's other ones that make you can claim extra nectar when you claim nectar from a flower. There are ones that let you move dice that you've already placed. All these kind of things. So yeah, some of those queen bee cards they can turn the game really.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about this game, I would say, the dice management thing is really important in this game, and this game can be nasty because of that. Because if you've rolled a bunch of dice and you know that another player is going to go for a certain space or really wants a certain space, you can try and block them off.
Yeah.
So you say, right, okay, they've got 2 3s, they've got 2 4s, they're probably going to use those to try and either hatch eggs or make honey. So they're 5 and they're 6 that they've got spare. They might want to claim another egg with that, so I'll put a 5 on that and try and block him out of this, So there is a bit of, it's not like multiplayer solitaire like a lot of these games can be. There is a lot of just looking at what other people looking at what other people are doing and trying to stop them while bees, they're really aggressive towards each other. This game.
The territorial and the hives, the battle. I mean, that's the one thing that the theme of this game and the kind of how it's played are quite strongly kind of meshed.
Yeah.
There's no, for like a worker placement game, occasionally they'll throw in a kind of daft, extraneous thing just to make the game work. Everything is quite like thematic. You're doing things that bees do. There's nothing in there that is daft.
No, there's none.
It's like getting eggs, hatching eggs, making honey. It makes sense that you have to get specific types of nectars to make honey, because you get honey that'll be from certain flowers or whatever like that. And the things that let you cut the corners are essentially the queen bee going, okay, we're doing, so it's nicely themed.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think because I like to see themes like this. I like to see themes that are different from other themes, because there's you get a lot of games that are really similar. The whole let's trade goods in the Mediterranean style thing. I mean, I do enjoy a lot of those games. A lot of those games are pretty good, but it's a theme that's just been flogged to death.
Let's go.
Zombies.
Right. Let's all go and do some like colonialist thing while conveniently forgetting the darker side of colonial history.
Yeah. I hate those games.
Really, you really dislike them.
They're the kind of Euro game I'm less keen on. Let's say.
I think I've got a kind of a soft spot for them because they were what got me into gaming in the first place. It was
Puerto
stuff
Rico.
like Puerto Rico, which isn't really the Mediterranean, but
Ah.
you know, but you've got other things like your Princess of Florence and all that kind of stuff. All those Mediterranean themed Renaissance games.
But I think all the best ones probably have something unique to them. I mean, you mentioned Princess of Florence there. It's got its wee thing with the where you place the buildings and all that sort of stuff. So the ones that kind of stand out are the ones that have something that feels unique to that game.
I'll tell you what I do dislike about a lot of Euro games is the games that are just kind of mechanics that are patched together. When there's nothing really innovative about them, it's just like this mechanic works and this mechanic works and this mechanic works, so we'll just throw them together and make a game. And I'm just like, no, don't do that. That's just tedious.
Any examples you can care to mention?
I think I've deleted them from my memory, to be honest. But there are a few out there that I've played and I've just gone, why have they done this? This is just like this is like mathematics, you know, like just A plus B plus C equals D. You know,
well, there's a few games that we have even talked about, and you're like sort of venture, like Concordia starts to sort of get into that territory a wee bit. I mean, it's pretty strong, and it's a bit like
those ones. Concordia has a weird, almost deck building thing to it, which I like, and I think that's what makes Concordia different. So anyway, back to Waggle Dance. The bee theme is something I've never seen before, and the game works. I mean, the game, the mechanics and the theme work well together, and it's a game that like I feel like I should play it more because I feel like there is a really thinky element to it at times.
No, I really enjoyed that yesterday, and it's one of those ones. Like, why don't we play this game more often? Because it's probably one of the stronger worker placement games.
Oh yeah,
it's. I suppose I would only describe it as like organic the way that it works. Just like the building up of your hive, everything feels kind of. There's a nice progression, and like you say, there is that competition element where you're constantly looking at each other's dice.
And everybody's trying to hide their dice when you just stop looking at my dice. Go away.
And that builds as the game goes on. You tend to be quite sort of self-interested in the first few turns where you're not going to get in each other's way too much, but as you start getting more dice and there's things that you're more specifically going for, then that competition element increases as the game goes on in a nice sort of rate.
Dave, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was slightly surprised. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would based on the initial impressions of it. I mean, it's an optimization game.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what, you know, I was like, oh, another optimization game. But it was fun. You do have to get that balance between developing your sort of production, so your number of bees and the size of your hive, because you have to build that. Excuse me. You have to build that up. But as we found out, there's an interesting tiebreaker because the game's quite tight, so there is a lot of potential for a number of people to reach the win condition at the same time.
Yeah, which happened.
Yes, and the tiebreaker, the first tiebreaker, is whoever has the least number of bees.
No, well, actually, the first tiebreaker is whoever's got the most honey. So if you've managed to make extra honey, then more honey than you needed to.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I did point this at Dave. Come on, there was no chance.
Yeah,
you both made it to 5.
You're probably right. Anyway, yeah, okay. So, well, I did
continue in this aggression.
Retroactive.
I had a group of 4 that I didn't convert. I don't think I could have.
No, sorry.
Yeah, so if the target is 5, if one person gets 5, but the other person manages to make 6 on the final turn, then the one with 6 wins. But then the second tiebreaker is the number of bees, because it's very tempting to, at the start, just really, really pump up the number of bees that you have, because it gives you more dice and it lets you do more things. But yeah, that could definitely work against you at the end.
I kind of feel like in a longer term game, like that was the strategy I was going for, and that was why I felt that suddenly cutting it down to 5 just basically fucked my entire strategy in one go, because I was almost certain I was going to pull ahead of you both in the next like turn or two in terms of like how much honey I had, and I could have crossed the 7 line before anybody got there, because of the sheer work power that I was able to put into it. But yeah, it makes sense because it's like optimization. If you're doing it with less bees, and it makes sense as a tiebreaker.
There's that, and
you'd be more efficient.
There's also just using there's an opportunity to use your dice efficiently in the gathering of nectar.
Yeah,
because if you can if you can get a single die down on one of the nectar squares and no one else puts any dice on there, you'll get 2 nectar from one die. And that can happen quite a lot at the beginning. It's more difficult to do.
I think that's how I got most of my nectar early on. It was just like, what's anybody not going for?
Yeah, that's where the dice peaking comes in early on, because you can roll your dice and you can see that you have, like, it's quite possible for you to have a number that no one else has, and then you're like, well, I'm going to get 2 nectar from that without having to think about it. Unless there's a Queen Bee card that comes in, which did happen.
That's it. The Queen Bee cards, they really do make a difference in this game, and especially when it comes to screwing with other people, I think.
That's the thing, I didn't pick up any of those ones that shunted dice around. You guys seem to get them quite frequently when you were...
Yeah, but I think in the last round I moved one of Dave's dice from one flower to another, just to screw with them more than anything else. I don't think it really made any real difference to the actual outcome of the game. It was just more just like, Dave's trying to win this, so I'm just going to move that over there just to annoy him a little bit.
I suppose they become more important because you say, like, as you're going on, you all have more dice, and the competition element becomes stronger. It becomes harder to keep track of what everybody's doing with their dice, because they've got so many more numbers to work with. You can't really do what you did in the earlier rounds, where you can kind of go, all right, well, I'm safe there.
Yes,
you can't really rule out as much stuff as you do. So yeah, it does come down more to kind of making use of the cards.
I think the whole thing with the fact that because you are expanding your hive, and you're getting more and more dice as you expand your hive, you know, if that's and like that's a couple of you were doing that, where I think me and Ian had very few dice compared to you two.
I ended up with, I think, 14 dice.
Yeah, it was something silly like that, from 6 to 14.
Aye.
And it gets to a point where you're like, people are rolling that much dice, and you're just kind of sitting staring at everybody's dice and trying to figure out what they're going to do with them. It does start to fry your brain a little.
That's the one thing it did make me feel kind of say. I'd roll all these dice and then see you looking at them, and I'd be like, looking at you, go, what do you think I'm going to do then?
I was just sitting there, I'll wait until he puts some of them on the board, and then I'll try and figure out what he's doing.
Yeah. You do need it makes it easier to roll doubles as well when you've got loads of dice.
And the doubles are important.
Yeah, because you need those for hatching bees and making honey, importantly. So yeah, it does free you up that way when you roll like 4 5s. You can use 2 to make some honey, and then you've got 2 5s spare to do other exciting things with. And it makes it very, very difficult for people to determine what you're going to do with that, because you've got so much flexibility with the larger number of dice. So yeah, it's an interesting balancing act.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I'm surprised it's not it's not more popular, because it's not a game that you hear about people playing a lot or anything like that.
The thing about it is as well, it's quite. For a worker placement game, it's almost like a travel site, because all the parts. There's no big board where you're placing all your things. You set up your cards. That constitutes your placement board, and then you've got your player board is essentially just these hexes to make up your hive, and if you're only going up to like 9 or 10 of them at most, you're not taking up a massive amount of space.
It's not taking up a lot of space, this game, at all.
So if you're into those types of games and you're going on a wee holiday, you're in a caravan, why not consider...
We're sorry to hear that.
Why not consider Waggle Dance for your weekend's entertainment?
Yes. So yeah, that's Waggle Dance, which is by Grublin or Grublin Games. I can't remember how you pronounce that one.
Grublin.
And that's designed by Mike Nudd. Nudd.
Good work, Mike.
Well done, Mike. Okay, so let's talk about one more thing. Got time for one more thing, I think. So this is something we've talked about before, but only I had played it at the time. So yesterday we had a chance for all 3 of us to play it. It was the last game we played, but we're all a bit brain dead by that point. But we did it anyway. It took a little bit longer than we thought it was going to. So this is The Pursuit of Happiness.
This is what I wanted to chuck in at the end to just give you some existential dread. The Pursuit of Happiness is essentially it's a very Eurogamey thing of playing through the life of a person.
Yes.
From
the ultimate goal of which is to die.
Yeah, dying ends the game, and you can also die at different times. You kind of have to take it as a bit of fun. the idea that your life essentially is you have, there's life goals you can try and attain. You pick up projects that you try and sort of get through that will give you long-term happiness, which is the victory points in this. Victory points of long-term happiness. Points. So yeah, you sort of you can play in a kind of look, you know, a themed life or whatever like that. I kind of fell into a thing of playing it. My first project that I picked up in the game was spiritual growth.
Yes.
And I reached enlightenment as a teenager, or I was just out of my teen years. And I decided to go with that, and so I decided you can spend your money on items which you then, a lot of the times you have to sort of upkeep, but they will give you sort of bonuses, you know, extra long-term happiness throughout the game. I decided not to go for any of them and just purely went for activities, because you can't take it with you, Chris.
Well, that's it.
It's all about experience.
But like I say, you can just drive a car off a cliff, so you could take it with you.
I suppose. And like the activities will usually, there's like a one-off thing. There'll be different sort of gradations of, you know, how much you spend on it. Maybe the more you spend time-wise or money-wise, the better the rewards you'll get. And you have other things. You can take jobs, you can develop relationships, and the jobs and relationships and the projects all work in similar ways, where you have progressions on the card. So you'll place a marker on the card and you'll have to meet certain conditions to move it up, and you'll get better rewards as you move it up.
I mean, the thing is, when it comes to the mechanical side of it, it's kind of like just a resource management game, really. Yeah. Because, I mean, there's worker placement. It's all about, you've got hourglasses that you place on the board in different spaces to say that, okay, today I'm going to study with this hourglass, and then, you know, I might take a project, I might go shopping and buy something. And you're getting various resources when you do certain things. So if you're studying, you get knowledge points. If you're playing, you get creativity points. If you are socialising, you get these social points. And you're just, like you say, you're spending these resources by, basically, you're putting effort into your different things. So if you're doing projects, it'll say to you, okay, in order to do the next level of this project, you need to have like maybe 4 creativity points and a knowledge point, and you need to spend an hourglass on it. So you're spending time of your life on that project and putting what you know into it. And I think the theme's quite strong with that.
Although even though there's something I find odd that, like, for the theme of playing through somebody's life, the emphasis on resource gathering and worker placement that are entirely abstract, based on like entirely abstract notions, is slightly bizarre.
But it represents your limited time.
Oh, totally, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's just weird.
Yeah, because if you take a job or enter into a relationship, that ties up, in order to maintain that ties up a number of your workers. And you only have 6 to begin with.
It's quite hard to get more.
Yeah, and you get more by pursuing sort of
healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, it's like a healthy lifestyle.
I got enlightenment reduces your stress level, which gives you more hourglasses.
Of course, yes, because it's all about stress.
The game is all about stress. Stress is what kills you in this game.
Yes.
So, like, the more stressful things you do, the less hourglasses you get, but you have to be very careful about your stress levels because it's very, very difficult to reduce them once they've gone past certain points. And actually entering into old age just causes you a hell of a lot of stress, and it gets worse the older you get. So eventually, yes, stress is what kills you in this game. There's nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, once you get onto the game's divided into, how many rounds is on that?
It's 9, I think, but maybe 9 or 10. But it's very, very difficult for anybody to get into that last round because the amount of stress that reaching that last old age step causes. You basically have to live the most healthiest, most enlightened lifestyle ever in order to survive into that round.
Yeah.
And to do that, you might be giving up a lot of other things.
Yeah. Well, I think this is it. If you do the healthy lifestyle type things, they tend not to give as many rewards in terms of long-term happiness or resources compared to like buying a speedboat, say.
Which I did.
Yeah.
I did buy a yacht. And then I was basically, at one point I had a job which was only funding the yacht's upkeep. I was making no actual money out of this job anymore.
But you were seeming to be getting some kind of long-term happiness.
I was getting long-term happiness from my yacht though, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was kind of I found myself really wary of all the item ones because I was just like I just terrified of getting myself in a position of having an item and not being able to pay for the upkeep of it. It's like real life, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I do like the way, like, I'm just looking at some of these cards here actually, and like the way that they actually use all the different resources for the different projects. So like all the cards in this are unique. There's quite a big deck of projects there, quite a big deck of items of activities there, and they're all unique. And a lot of it is, it's all just flavour, but the art's really, again, it's really cartoony, comic-y sort of style art. And it's quite fun. The game sort of, it tries to be light-hearted and not give you existential dread, even though it kind of does when you do sit and reflect on your own life after you play this game. But so you've got stuff like, you know, the game kind of makes sense. So like direct play. So the project, this is a project called Direct Play. So you're directing a play.
Okay.
And you the projects are all sort of split into 4 levels, and you start at level 1 and you take a project, and as you go through the game you can spend more time and resources on that project to go up to the next level. So the first level, the direct play, is a school play, and it costs you 1 creativity point to do that. That makes sense thematically. So you're creative, you're writing a play, and then you get 2 social points out of that. That also makes sense. You're making friends, you're networking while you're doing it. The next level's amateur play, so you've got to spend an hourglass, and then creativity and social. So you know, you're writing your play, you're using your social networking thing to get people into your play, that kind of thing. And then you get knowledge and money and long-term happiness out of doing that. And then you go up to the next step, which is professional theatre. You'll get more money and long-term happiness out of that. And then you become a big-time director. And that's your project complete once you get to that stage, but you get bigger rewards as you go up through the levels. And you can only have like 3 projects in front of you at one time, but you know, if you're in a relationship, that counts as a project. If you have a job, that counts as a project. Yeah. And having more than 3 causes you stress. You can have multiple relationships in this game as well, which I will just find hilarious, but it causes you so much stress that it's not worth doing.
That's the thing with the multiple relationships, because just having 2 out, that automatically is giving you stress.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, you're probably going to have a project and a job on the go as well, so you're getting the stress from that.
And it's thematic. It's just like, you know, the stress of trying to
balance all these...
trying to hide the fact you're in 2 different relationships from these people. I just love that thing. But also, we should say that at the start of the game, you deal some long-term goals out.
Oh, yeah.
That all people, basically, they're just bonus points at the end of the game, and whoever gets the thing that's on the card, so it can be stuff like whoever has the least resources left at the end of the game, and that card's called focused, I believe. So you've done everything that you can do in your life, and you've spent all your resources and stuff like that, and you know, you've been very focused on what you've been doing. But there's another one, like the one that came out was the Live Fast Die Young, and basically you get shitloads of points if you're the first person to die, which I mean, and it's that kind of tongue-in-cheek thing with this game. It is just very light-hearted with it. So what did you think of it actually as a game then, Euan?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's fun because you feel like you're playing a game with lots of possibilities.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, it's just like a series of cards or whatever like that, but you do think about what's the idea behind this card? Why would I take this? Does this make sense for this person that I seem to have developed into?
Yeah.
And that kind of made it for me. I liked the fact that I managed to wrangle second place. Was it second place?
Yeah, you did. I think.
Right at the end so my longevity worked.
It did. It worked out for you in the end.
Even though you snuck in with me at the end. In fact, I died before you somehow.
Yeah, so
because you did some last minute yoga
at a very early age. I think I dumped. I decided to take a relationship with a guy called Jimmy because he had a cracking moustache, and I dumped him so that I could go and do some yoga instead, and ended up living a longer life because of it. It didn't get me anywhere. I was terrible. I think I came last.
I think it's fun to play like a really solid Euro game where you can actually you can build these silly sort of narrative things around it as you're playing it.
Oh yeah,
I think you don't always get that from
I think that's a big thing in this game. And because at the end of the game you can sit and look through all the cards all the projects you did and all the items you bought, and then reflect on what kind of a life this person led, and that's quite fun.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that is the thing that this game really brings, because mechanics wise it's not super interesting, I would say.
It's pretty simple. There's nothing groundbreaking there. No.
Yeah, but when I played my game, as my life unfolded, it told a truly terrifying story.
Oh, I forgot about these.
Oh yeah, you had a creepy doll collection, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, that I had to maintain with my job. I mean, I only went to work in order to spend money on my porcelain dolls that I then took with me to like the cinema and the theatre, and we lived together in a caravan.
Did you not become a disgraced scout leader at one point?
Yes, I was also a scout leader.
You're just the kind of man that you wouldn't leave your kids with.
No, it was fortunate that I died so soon. I think I was pleased.
But by your own standards of this, by this person's own standards, he lived a happy life. Because obviously we objectively beat the rest
He
of
was
us.
happy in himself,
I said it was a kind of life. You'd like to say it was a life well lived. I'm not sure it necessarily was. But that's what I mean. You just look at it at the end. It was like you're saying. You go back through your cards and like reflect on the life that you lived.
Oh, totally.
Very interesting.
Okay, right, we're going to have to leave it there though. So that is The Pursuit of Happiness. I'm going to let Euan
by
pronounce
David Churkop and Adrian Abella
with
Vangelis, not the Vangelis, Vangelis Bagiartakis.
by a designer. That's The Pursuit of Happiness.
That's probably one of the
let's
few-
just say it's by Artipia Games.
That's probably one of the few Greek game designers I've ever seen. You'd think
there's
there'd
been
be
a
a lot.
few, I think, actually. Anyway, we're going to have to wrap the show up there. We're fast running out of time. So
And Pavel's not even here.
Pavel's not here. I don't know what's happened. Must have been Dave. Right, let's give out all our internet stuff quickly. So our email address, if you want to ask us any questions, we can answer on the show, anything like that. You can send that to firstplayertoken@gmail.com. That's FIRST player token, which is one word. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. They're all First Player Token or the large and unnecessary First Player Token. The exception being at Twitter, which is at 1ST Player Token.
At once player token.
Thank you, Euan. We have a website. Same as usual, www.firstplayertoken.com. My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris. We did stream all our board gaming yesterday on that channel, and
It should still be up.
the videos are still up. I'm going to try and get them across to YouTube at some point. Okay. And I also play video games on there if you want to come and watch me. We have a Discord. You can ask us for the link for that, and we are part of the Podnose Network,
The UK's leading entertainment podcast network. Currently featuring some new shows. There's now a wrestling. So I'm hoping there's a bit of crossover there. You'd think there would be.
Yeah.
And yet another London-based improv show. So whatever.
Well, there you go. There's also several other podcasts.
Like I say, what was it, over 30 at the last count. So yeah.
Okay, so you can find the Podnose website at www.podnose.com. Mm-hmm. So that's episode 48 in the bag. We will return next week with a video games episode. Sure, we'll have a few things to talk about there. Hopefully Pavel will be back. Hopefully Dave won't be.
Hate video
Only
games.
joking, Dave. You can come along if you like.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, we will see you then. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Welcome to the unnecessary and large token.
Try that again.
Poking Frogcast.
Poking Frogcast.
Argent unnecessary Poking Frogcast.